Tak jo, další přednáška bude pocházet od autora, od Reného Pedersena, který je expert na agilní technologie a řízení velkých projektů napříč různými týmy. So let me introduce Rene Pedersen, who is an expert in agile technologies and running large projects across multiple teams. This presentation is going to be held completely in English, so let's go. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Yes, my name is Rene Pedersen. I work a little bit here in the Czech Republic. I work in Paris, where I'm based. I'm responsible for the projects being developed for Pixmania here in the Czech Republic. And as such, I'm here once every 2-3 weeks on a basis. Let me give you a little bit about my background. After university, I set up a company developing software. And one of the things we ran into, we started a company ourselves. We were basically 2 guys, and we then shortly after hired a developer. But being in a small company, having to pay the bills, having to pay the salaries, obviously we were constantly under pressure to getting new things out and well, deliver new features to our clients. So, as with many other things, I think, you know, in school, in university, you learn that we have to first do all the specifications. You know, you can spend 3 months doing that. You then spend 6 months developing the stuff, and then maybe you spend 3 months in the end where you test everything. When you work in a small company, that just doesn't seem to work. Constant pressure, things are changing, you need to adapt, etc., etc. So we were operating in a mode that we called quick and dirty. And I remember after each release of the software we got, I told myself, okay, this is the last time. Next time we're going to do it exactly by the book, exactly like they taught us in school, so we do all the specs, etc., etc. But basically it was impossible. Then at some point I fell over an article about something called Scrum, and starting reading this, I realized that there were a lot of things described in this mythology that we were actually doing. You know, it said that, hey, you don't need to make all the specification up front because things do change and you will lose a lot of time specifying something that you will never develop. And looking into this, you know, it was kind of a relief because we actually found out that some of the things we were doing were actually better than what we had learned in school. So it was a little bit like coming home. It was a bit of a relief, and obviously I started looking into more and more about Scrum, about Kanban, about extreme programming, lean, etc., etc. To finish off my background, we set up the company in Denmark. I'm Danish, I'm from Denmark. We started a sales office in Germany. We then moved to London to open the British market. We then opened offices in Norway, in Sweden, in Holland, in France, and in the United States also. After working in my company for 10 years, I sold my part of it. I moved to Barcelona, where I did some mountain climbing. I went to the beach. I learned some Spanish, and I did a couple of, you know, consultancy-based projects, mostly around Scrum also, which leads me to where I am today in Pixmania group, where I, as I said, work in Paris. So just a little bit about the company. It's actually several companies. It's quite big. The main company is called Dixon's Group, which owns Pixmania Group, where you have 3 companies: Pixmania, which is based in Paris, eMerchant, which is the tech company delivering all the technology, all the products that we use, and then there is Pixmania SRO, which is what we call Pix Valley, which is the company that I represent here today. So let's get on with the agile stuff. When you read about particularly Scrum and Kanban, the theory is very, very simple. You can read the theory, the rules, what you're supposed to do, the entire framework in an afternoon. The theory is extremely simple. And when you read it, it makes a lot of sense, and you will ask yourself, hey, this is pretty cool, why isn't everybody working like this? Now the problem is that in practice, it's kind of difficult. It requires a lot of discipline. You work with people have different backgrounds, you work with different projects, you have a boss who may be pro-agile or against it. You know, he's always thinking about the bottom line. The thing is, in practice, it's very, very difficult to implement agile methods. And this is why, whereas if you ask 100 companies that say, yeah, we use agile, 80% of them are not really using agile. They do the daily meetings, they do the weekly meetings, they have some roles specified, but they do not get the return, the result of what they are supposed to be. And we call them Scrum bots, and it's 80% of more of all companies that actually say that they are doing agile. So it leads to the main question, and this is the question you should all ask yourself when you start using either Scrum or Kanban or something like this. What is the objective? Why are we doing this? Because if you do not have a very clear objective, you will be very, very lucky if you actually achieve anything. How many in here are actually using Scrum or Kanban or Lean or some kind of agile method in your daily work? So, a few. And can I ask some of you, why are you using it? You use it?
Yeah, I use it in startup. It's impossible to be slow and not flexible. So we are very flexible. We need to get things fast out. So we use Scrum.
Anybody else? Peter?
Yes, we are using Scrum in immersion, and it works.
I would say one thing, when you have an objective, when you work in a company, there's one thing that counts, and it's making money. It's very, very simple. If you do not make money, or if you make less money than the competition, you will have fewer resources to do what you need to do. So, how can you, as developers or managers in an IT company, how can you help your company make more money? More money than the competition, because this is all about what it's all about. It's relative, you know, you need to be better than the competition. And that's also very simple. You need to be more productive than your competitors are, and at the same time deliver a quality which is at least as good and preferably better. So it really all comes down to productivity when you want to deliver something for your company. So with this goal in mind, when you start using Scrum or Kanban, think about this. Hey, we need to be more productive. If we are doing Scrum because our boss told us to, or because we're sitting at work and, hey, this is pretty boring, you know, we're doing the same thing day in and day out, let's try something new. This is kind of, you know, could be motivations, but it's not the real reason why you should be using Scrum. And if you use any of these reasons, it's very, very likely that you end up being one of the Scrum bots and not one of the companies that actually see the real gain of using Scrum. So keep this in mind. It's very, very simple. You need to make more money, and the way to do that is to become more productive. So, I'm not here today to talk about all the rules and how Scrum works, etc., etc. I'm pretty sure that most of you have already heard about it, at least the guys that are using it. So I'm more here to talk about a practical implementation, because this is the hard part. You know, how do we actually implement it? So let me take a practical example. When I started in a company, I went in there and we started working. I remember it was on the 3rd of January, and I remember at the 5th of January I was called into the CEO's office together with my boss and together with some other people. And he told me that one of the teams you have, you know, they are not at all performing, and they haven't been performing for a year or two, and it's really a mess. And he gave us a set of goals, things to achieve, things that we had to develop, and we were told if this wasn't achieved, somebody would lose their job. So, thank you very much, welcome to the company. You know, let's not put too much pressure. So I had a look at the team. This is one of the first things you need to do. You need to know what you're working with. So we had a backlog with like 114 items. They used Jira at the time, so it's very easy to see these things. They also had different types for the tasks they were doing, so it was very easy to extract that they spent 42% of their time every week doing bug fixes. They spent 26% doing support, meaning that somebody said, hey, this is not working, or this is broken, or this feature is not working the way it should be, so they had to be fixed. They spent 16% on internal quality. By that I mean documenting the code, making sure that, you know, it's refactored, etc., etc. And they spent 16% developing new features. And it's quite obvious, no, that spending 16% of your time, we had a number of things, I'll get back to that we had to deliver, and the time frame was 6 weeks. So with 16% of the time, there's just no way that you will ever be able to deliver something. So something had to change, something big. One of the things responsible for this is actually the clients. The clients are the ones that want new features. But at the same time, these numbers are caused by the way that the clients are asking for things. Because they want things, they want a feature. And if you ask a client, hey, I can do it quick and dirty, you will have the functionality, and you can have it in 2 days, or we can do it in the proper way, and it'll take a week. And pretty much without exception, they will say, hey, I like the 2-day version. That's pretty cool. No, no, just give it to me fast. And that will be the same the next week, and the week after, and the week after. What they don't realize, by doing that, we create what we call technical debt. And this is something that will hit us at some time, you know, which will really slow us down. Actually, it creates this situation where we're spending 60% of our time doing new features. And this number, 16%, should be 80 or 90%. So, they ask it for quick and dirty, but they think it's short term. Now, we need to make sure that the client understands why we need to think long term. And it's kind of our responsibility to make sure of that when we deal with the clients. One of the problems we had with this team was that we had internal clients and external clients. We basically had 7 clients coming for this team. And I remember the first meeting I had with the clients, and we sat down, and they, you know, there were, I think, 4 or 5 of them, and they all had like a long list of features that they wanted to have delivered during the week. And I'm sitting looking at them and say, okay, yeah, but this is cool, but guys, you have 5 lists, you know, I want 1 list. I cannot prioritize between of you, you know, I have no knowledge about the business value of what you're doing. So, give me 1 list. And they said, hey, no, but hey, we can't do that, you know, this is not our job. Well, I said, it's for sure not my job. And I'll tell you what, this week, because you haven't provided 1 list for me, I will work on what I think is important, not what you guys think is important. I have, you know, a lot of stuff that's important. So, go home, go back. Next week, you come back and you give me 1 list. So we worked on exactly what we wanted to do. The clients, they were not happy. But to be honest, it's not my responsibility to prioritize between the clients. Next week, they came back again. Again, they had 1 list each. I said, guys, hey, we already talked about this last week. I don't want 5 lists, I want 1 list. So this week, again, we're going to work on exactly what I think is important, not what you think is important. And they said, But it's impossible. There is no way we can agree because we all think that our part of this is the most important in the company. I say, yeah, it's cool enough, but that's not my problem. That's your problem. And if you can't figure it out between you, then find somebody who can arbitrate. Find somebody in the company who has a position that he knows where is the real business value and what should be developed first. So I sent them home, and for the second week we were working on exactly what we thought was important. Third week, they actually came with one list. Everything was prioritized. And I said, this is cool, now we can get down to it. So what I'm saying is, developers, they tend to be too nice. They tend to say yes too much because they don't like problems. They don't like to, cause the conflict. But if you don't deal with it when you have multiple clients, you will be playing a losing game. There's no way you can come out of this because you will end up doing a little bit for everybody and nobody will get all of the things you want and everybody will hate you. And everybody will talk bad about you. And I think people that work in bigger companies, they will recognize this as, being the fact. So just be tough, saying, guys, we're doing development, we're not prioritizing, we don't know anything about business value, we can't even spell it. So you guys, you do your part of the job, and we will do ours. And it took 2 or 3 weeks, but they learned it, and it has been working ever since. Now, what's really important when you work on projects, specifically when you have, for example, 6 weeks or 6 months to deliver something, is visibility. In our company, we use something called Jira, and we have a plugin called Greenhopper to handle the agile stuff. And one of the important things is the burn down chart. For example, this one here, where you have your tasks. If you use Scrum, Kanban, you will estimate them using story points. And basically, once you have estimated your project, you will have an amount of story points, and this is where you begin. And every week, you will measure what features that you have made and you have delivered that are completely 100% done, and you will see it burns down. The cool thing about this is that if you have a deadline, you can see whether or not you will reach it. You could see here in the beginning, we were doing pretty well. We're following the red line. You can also see here, the line goes flat, which means either everybody's on holiday or new features are being added to the backlog. In our case, it was new features. So you can see all of a sudden, okay, it's not so cool anymore. We are getting away from the red line, and we will, if we continue like this, we will not reach the deadline. So some features here we're taking out, some features that they said, this is not necessary. Some were put in, and you can see here we moved quite a lot. But with this tool, it's very visual, and you have it updated on a weekly basis. It can be seen by the developers, by the clients. Everybody can see whether or not we are on track. And the important thing here is that we know, because let's face it, if they ask for a lot of features with a specific time frame, it can be physically impossible to deliver everything. But this way, we know before the last day whether or not we can deliver, and we can either decide to take out some features, add more resources, or move the deadline. Now the clients, they will never like to do any of these things because it will cost more money or it will take more time, but I can tell you one thing, they like it a lot more that they have 3 options to choose from instead of just being told, guys, we're sorry, we can't deliver on the last day. So, just a quick thing about making things visual. You should have a whiteboard. I know it's low-tech, old-fashioned, etc., but it is very, very efficient. For every week, you have things to do, things in progress, and things that are done. And with this one, it's very easy to see whether a team is doing okay or whether they are definitely not doing okay. Because let's have a look at this one is the way it's supposed to be. This one here is a bad one. Why is this? It's bad because normally we put the most important things at the top and we work our way down. here you can see the team, they started with the least important things. And this means that if they get to the end of the sprint and they haven't delivered, it's actually the most important tasks which are not being delivered. They start with the least important task. So you see something like this, and you see, hey, this team needs to go back and actually think about what they're doing, because they're doing things in the wrong order. This one here is even worse, because you can see that the team has started pretty much everything, and pretty much nothing has been done. This means that at the end of the sprint, if you don't finish, you will actually not be able to deliver one single thing. Started everything. It's even worse than doing things in the wrong order. So this one, all the alarm bells goes off, and you for sure have to deal with it. This one is another one, unplanned items, too much support. It's very much the picture of the team as I saw you first, where we were spending only 16% of the time actually doing development. Of course here, some drastic things have to be done, like we did with our team. We basically stepped in and said, guys, we're using 80% doing things that are not new development. And we are simply going to put a limit to it. We're going to say maximum 20% of the time every week we're doing it, because otherwise we will never get out of this mess. So let's just have a look at what it's supposed to look like. Beginning of the sprint or midway through the sprint, it's supposed to look like this. The topmost things are done. So keep this image in your head. This is what it's supposed to look like. Okay, let's get back to the things. We started on January the 5th. That's when we went to see the CEO. We had to finish a tool called ShopBot. They had been working on it for 2 years, and they had not finished it. Now we had 6 weeks. But it was not the only thing we had to do. We also had to migrate another tool to MySQL 5. Well, actually 3 tools had to be migrated to MySQL 5, and we had to optimize a tool which was just taking too long to process every day. On top, we had to handle all the dependencies with other teams. That means that the CEO made it very clear, I don't care if when you get to the end of it, if you haven't delivered, you will not be able to excuse yourself by saying, another team was supposed to do this and deliver it to us. I will hold you responsible for that too. Great. And operational, that means the client, they had to accept and saying, okay, the tools have been delivered and they are working according to the specs that we have given. And the delivery date was February the 15th. So what do you do in this case? Well, you get down to it. As I said, the first thing I checked out how much time they were spending doing development and how much time they were doing support, etc., etc. So the first thing was to figure out what features were actually missing in these tools. What did we have to develop? We had to look at the dependencies, the infra team. What did they need to do of setup of servers? What did the database administrators have to do, and what other teams had to do something for us? So we got all of this under control. We estimated, we prioritized the tasks, and basically we started the first sprint. Every single day, not every week, every single day we updated the burn down chart, because we were running on a 6-week period and we had no time to lose reaction time. It was simply not good enough if we saw 1 week after that we were not on track. So we did this on a daily basis. So we went along and we found out that there were some features that we hadn't thought about. They were added to the product backlog. Then, of course, Murphy is alive and well, and on January the 17th there was the sourcing tool had to be migrated immediately. They had some problems and this was mission critical. So we cancelled that sprint and I put the entire team on what we call swarming. It basically means that you take all 5 people and you put them on one single task. It doesn't matter if there's 1 or 2 or 3 people at sometimes that sits and can't do anything. You just swarm it and you make sure it gets done, and this method is very, very efficient. You can't use it for everything because it takes quite a lot of energy and stuff in the team, but if you really need to fix something very fast, it's very, very efficient. So after 3 weeks of work, we had a pretty good overview. We had been working through the things and we knew that we had at least something like 95, 98% of the features that we would have to develop. And the burn down chart pointed towards that we would be able to start testing on February 5th, which was 10 days before we had to deliver. So it was actually looking pretty well. Then, of course, the clients, even though we talked to them every day, they went to the CEO and they told him that two of the tools was what they said was in an alarming state, basically that there had been no progress, it was still crap, etc., etc. So we were called to a meeting with the CEO again. But because we had our burn down charts, we had our product backlog, then it was very easy to point out that, hey, guys, it doesn't look bad. In fact, we are well on our way to deliver the things. Here are the things that needs to be done. Here are the things that that has already been done. The burn down, as you can see, we will begin testing 10 days before. And it took like 5 minutes to convince the CEO, hey, we were the one who were right and the clients were the ones that didn't have the complete picture. And what they said simply wasn't accurate. So normally it's IT that gets blamed for this, but because we had our documentation in order, it was the clients that were told by the CEO, guys, why is this? Why are you causing these problems? Just get back to your work and make sure that we deliver. So February 8th, we found a critical feature missing. Delivery fees. Now, the good news was it wasn't our team that was supposed to develop it. It was 2 other teams in the company. The bad news was that we were responsible for the dependencies. But we went to them, we talked to them, and we found a solution, and they worked very well and very cooperative, and they delivered the feature that we needed in time. So in short, on January the 19th, the sourcing V1 was done. On January the 21st, the first mailing, January 27th, the back office mailing was done. February 14th, the mailing optimization was done. And on February 15th, the work was accepted and signed off. And the clients were very happy, the CEO was very happy. And of course, we had been spending 6 weeks working hard, but everybody was happy because we had delivered a real result. And put this into context. This with a team that for between 1 and 2 years have been working, not really delivering anything because they were dealing with multiple clients. We actually had clients that said that we had delivered more in 6 weeks than they had delivered in 2 years. Now, that's a big exaggeration, but it just shows that when you really get these things going, then you show results and everybody benefit from it, and everybody is happy, and it just becomes a nicer place to work. So what made this work? Now, don't take this as some facts and you say, if I apply this in my company, for sure everything will be green and rosy, because as I said, all projects are different, and all teams are different, and companies are different. But in this case, what really made it work was the short feedback loop. The sprints of 1 week. When I told the team at first that we would do the sprints of 1 week, they said, no, it's too much, because all the overhead of actually delivering and putting into production, we will waste too much time. It's much better if we just sit down and we work flat out for 6 weeks. I said, yeah, but hey, guys, you work flat out for 6 weeks and we find out something is missing, and hey, this is the deadline, what do we do? Because of the pressure, they knew the severity of the thing, they didn't complain too much, so they accepted it. And in hindsight, they could also see, hey, it's very good to be reactive, but to be reactive, you need to measure on a regular basis. So, sprints of 1 week, definitely a good thing. That we visualize the impediments. We had them on a whiteboard. Every morning when we had the daily meeting, everybody would see them. It was not like they were hidden in a piece of paper or in an Excel spreadsheet that you would take out and look at from time to time. They were very visual on the whiteboard. Obviously, proactive resolution of impediments. When there's a problem, it needs to be dealt with. If it isn't dealt with, of course, it won't happen. We had very good inter-team collaboration. Everybody knew that this was serious, so everybody was was very good. Even the clients, even though they went a couple of times to complain to the CEO, we actually had a very good collaboration with them, and we talked to them and about the features, etc., etc. And of course, minimize short-term work. As I said, 16% of the time each week spent on doing something that's not development, you will get nowhere. So even if it means that it will cost the company money short-term, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, to get into a state where you can deliver features 80% of your time is just really important. So, in short, there's one thing you should take away from what I'm saying here today is that of all the companies that says that they're doing Scrum or Agile, they are actually not. And why is that? It's not enough to do the meetings. It's not enough to have all the roles defined. When can you actually say that you are doing Scrum? It all comes down to deliver working software. Because you know that if a project takes, if it takes 12 months to finish 90% of a project, how long does it take to finish the last 10%? Now you ask IT managers this, and most of them will say that will take another 12 months. Why is it that it takes as long to finish the last 10% as it takes to finish the first 90%? There's something wrong here, no? And it's pretty simple. It comes down to the way we measure our progress. Because when you have a typical project, you have a lot of tasks, and in the beginning, it's very easy. You have the I'm going to take this one, I'm going to take this one, this one is cool, I'll get it done very fast. So they take all the tasks which are easy. Now, sometimes they run into a task, and they can't quite finish it because they're waiting for something because the server isn't there or there's something else missing. So, they put it on hold. Now, when you start putting things on hold, alarm bells should go off. Because it means that you will start another task, which is pretty easy to finish. And you will finish it. Etc., etc. Until you have finished 90%, which is the 90% which are easy. The last 10%, this is where all the problems are, where all the difficult tasks are. And this is exactly why it takes as long to finish the last 10% as it takes to finish the first 90%. Now, this, I think, is pretty clear to everybody. But, so what should you do? You should make sure that you finish the task that you have started. It's a clear rule in Kanban and in Scrum that you do not start a task which you can't finish. Now, sometimes you will start one and you will run into unforeseen problems. But what do? You have to fix them. You have to fix the problems immediately. So that's what it means when it says deliver working software. It means that it's, even if we don't put it into production, that it's ready to go into production just by the push of a button. Because otherwise you're pushing all the problems in front of you. And for sure, you will break the deadline. So, take this one with you. When you're doing Scrum, when you're doing Kanban, anything Agile, I tell my teams that if they can deliver working software 4 out of 5 sprints, then they are working Agile. Not when they do all the daily meetings every single day, and the retrospective meeting, and the sprint planning meeting, and the sprint demo. Has nothing to do with it. Remember the goal, we need to increase our productivity. And this one here is the key in doing that. As I can see, I still have a little bit of time. I'm going to show you another one here, just to show the effect of what project fragmentation can do for the earnings in a company. Let's say we have a company with 2 clients. They can be internal or external. One we call Pix, the other one we call Pix Pro. They both have a project that needs to be done, And I can guarantee you this, that if you discuss with them what should we do first, they cannot let the other one have the projects done first. From their point of view, their project is the most important one. So we will end up in the situation where we were before, that we will work a little bit on one and a little bit on the other one, etc., etc. So what's that going to look like? It's going to look like this. We do a little bit of the Pix project, then a little bit of the Pix Pro, and so on, and so on, and so on. And everybody might not be 100% happy, but in their eyes, this is the best way, and they are actually pretty content with this way of working. Now, what's the problem? The problem is that for the Pix project, it's going to be delivered where I put the dollar sign. That means this is where they start making money. And of course, the Pix Pro one will start making money here. There's an alternative way of doing this. We can start by doing the Pix project, finish it, deliver it, and then we can do the Pix Pro project. Now this is the one that's very difficult to convince well, it's not difficult to convince Pix, but it's very difficult to convince Pix Pro about this approach. But you see, here the company will start making money at this point in time, and Pix Pro here. And what's curious about this is that actually both companies should be happy about it. No, for Pix Pro, obviously, but even Pix Pro, they will start making money. Let's say that this is 1 week or 1 month. Let's just say it's 1 week. They will start making money before they actually otherwise would start making money. So they should be more happy with this one, but they are not, because their ego is just too big. Now, what does this mean for the earnings? Let's say that the Pix project, once it's done, it will mean an additional earning of 1 million euro per week. Maybe you say that this is a lot of money, but in a company that has a turnover of 500 million, it's not. It's completely normal that you can do a project that has this kind of additional earning. And let's say that the Pix Pro, once it's done, will generate 750,000 euros extra revenue per week. Let's do the numbers. Pix will gain 3.5 million euros extra, simply because between this delivery here, 1, 2, 3.5 weeks before, the company on the bottom line at the end of the year will have 3.5 million euros extra on the bottom line. And of course, Pix Pro will have 750. So just by doing things according to the second one, we will earn 4.25 million euros extra. We are working with the same teams, we're working with the same projects, there is no difference, there is just the order of which we are doing things. But there's a massive difference in how much money the company will make. Now, when you have to convince Pix Pro, which is of course the project which makes less than the other one, that they should be second. When you show them something like this, it's very, very difficult for them to argue that, hey, we should either split it up or we should be first. Everybody with something like this can see, you know, why we do things in the order that we do them. So, take these things into consideration. It's part of the visualizing the things for the clients, and it's part of the job that we do when we actually work with the clients. Now, I just want to show you another thing. The last one is, of course, also obvious. We have, let's say the development team is 4 developers. Then you put 2 developers on the Pix, and you put 2 developers on the Pix Pro. And yeah, obviously, you know, we get the money in the end. One thing though, why is it that this bar here is longer than this one? We do the same job, no? We do exactly the same tasks. We don't do anything else different. So why is it that the top one is longer than the 2 other ones? Because we do multitasking, no? We do a little bit of this project. Then we stop, and the team has to switch over and do the other one. Okay, that's cool. But then they come back to this one, and the first thing they have to do is, hey, exactly where were we? What were we doing? What was the thoughts about this? And simply multitasking, switching between tasks will cost you some extra time. I have even been very, very conservative here. The difference here is 12.5%. But in practice, we are actually talking about that multitasking, based on actually looking at real projects, will cost you between 50 and 200% additional time. So I'm very, very conservative, and these numbers here are in fact much bigger. But even being conservative here, you can see the massive difference there is. So I think that was it. There's a little bit of time for some questions, or otherwise you can always find me later on or tonight at the party if you have anything you want. Is there anybody that who has any questions? Okay. So I think there's time now for a 10 minutes break before the next presentation.